Hey y'all, so today I'm going to tell you 5 reasons why your art is vital right now. For those of you that don't know me, my name is J Mason III. I am a full-time poet and educator that has been independently working for the last 6 years. And so a lot of times other artists will ask me, well, how did you get to be a full-time poet? How did you make that work? How do you make the art sustainable? And so I find myself often in positions of coaching and supporting other artists in their movement towards becoming fully sustainable. And so I find that a lot of the times when I'm teaching people tactics, it's not really the tactics that are the difficult part to wrap their minds around and wrap our minds around. And I say that because I am not a rocket scientist of any kind, of any caliber, right? Raise your hand if you failed math, right? I failed math, right? But I've learned a certain set of skills that has allowed me to stay in business for the last 6 years, and I'm booked out till the next year, for the next year. So I feel like I'm going to be at it for a little while longer. And so I want to kind of talk to you today about a basic framework about why your art is vital so we can get into creating a world for you in which you can take your art to the next level and allow yourself to be a fully sustainable artist. So, one, the first reason that your art is vital now is because art documents culture and history, right? And so there are some poems for myself, and I don't know about for my other folks in the room or watching on the YouTube sphere that are performance poets, but there are some poems for me that I write that take a lot of research, right? I think my favorite poems often take a lot of research about what's sort of happening in the world, what's kind of going on, all that kind of stuff, what has happened in the past, all those things, right? And there are some poems I just write off the dome that are really just about my own experience, my own particular experience, that sometimes don't have any, that aren't necessarily intending to teach people a whole bunch of things about the outside world, but we're just about me, right? Which is also fine. And so even when you're writing just about yourself, even when you're painting something just for the sake of painting, even when you're just spitting a tune to yourself, or even when you're doing that, right? Art documents a particular moment in history, right? So I try to think of each art piece, each thing that we create as part of a larger time capsule. Like if someone was to land in your bedroom 100 years from now, they could use some of your art to kind of tell them about what was the world like at that time, what were people using, what kind of mediums were people using, all that different stuff, right? So that your art provides a service in the sense of it provides a moment in time around our culture and our history. Two, every problem needs a creative problem solver in order to fix it, right? So even as I joked earlier that I failed out in math, I didn't really fail. I got a withdrawal pass. It's whatever. But that's okay for those of us that did fail, right? No shade. No shade to anyone that did fail math. Clearly, a lot of us turned out okay without being the biggest mathematicians on the block, right? But so even when I think about a skill like math, in order to put someone on the moon, right, someone had to imagine a world where it was possible to put someone on the moon and to create the math problems in order to make that happen. Right? So when I think about what does it take to build a building, right, that is beautiful and livable and all those things, it takes someone to imagine creatively what that could look like. Like every housing space doesn't look the same. Every country and culture that you go into, it took people to imagine what those conditions would look like, right? When I think about even for those of us that are on the ground and do lots of activism work, right? The ability to imagine a world free from oppression, right? The imagination that it takes to capture the idea of what it means to live in a world free of oppression, right? That also requires creativity, right? So that belief requires creativity because it is a world that we have not lived in and that none of us have ever experienced, right? So let's even count that as number 3. So being able to imagine a world free from oppression is number 3. Number 4, art creates passion, truth, understanding, and desire, right? So have you ever listened to a song that created a certain type of mood for you? Like maybe you were kind of sad and it made you happy, right? Or gave you a different framework, right? Maybe you heard someone spit a poem or you saw a movie that changed your framework about a certain type of person or a certain type of situation, right? So that there's a way in which art allows us and accesses for us a part of our intellectual selves that we can't do just through speech alone, just speaking in the ways that we do normally, that we can't do from just statistics, that art allows us to get to a different type of understanding of the truth, understanding of each other, and compassion. Which brings me to number 5. We ready for number 5? Y'all ready? Okay. So number 5, and I hope you agree with this, but in a world in which so much is happening all the time, right? That is negative, that is down, that is all the different stuff, right? We understand as human beings, we do not just need water and food to survive, right? We need meaning, right? So to me, number 5, and the most important part about why your art is vital right now, is because art creates the conditions in which we are compelled to want to live, right? So art creates the conditions for us to feel compelled to want to live, right? So there have been studies that talk about if you leave a baby in the dark, right, but you give it food and you give it water, right, but you don't touch it, right, that baby will die, right, because we need connection. Art gives us some form of connection with each other, with other people from across the world. And also it even gives us connection sometimes to access empathy even for ourselves. Like sometimes there's a place in which we do not get used to seeing ourselves as human. And art allows us to do that, especially when we see art from people who come from our communities. And so for those of us, especially, I'm hoping that for those of us that come from targeted communities that are listening to me and watching me sort of say this right now, but for those of us that come from trans and queer communities, for those of us that come from Black and brown communities, for those of us that come from immigrant communities, disabled communities, that come from undocumented communities, right, that come from working class and broke ass communities, right? So I'm hoping that you understand that your art has the capacity to change so many things. If you are creating something that you feel compelled by, that you are excited about, there is someone that will be excited about your work and needs you to get it out and put it in a place that they can see it and access it or feel it or hear it or sense it, right? So I'm hoping in the world that you stick around, so you can feel free to subscribe to this channel. As I said, I'm going to be kind of doing a few more kind of videos over the next few weeks and months, specifically about sustainability for artists. So that's what I'm going to be using my channel for in the coming months. And yeah, please leave in the comments if you think there's another reason that your art is vital now or that people's art is vital now. Also, please feel free to follow me on Instagram at jmace3rd. So it's at jmaceii. And hopefully I'll talk to y'all soon. So thank y'all for paying attention. Thank y'all for watching. And create more art because we need it.